What if the paycheck isn't the reason I'm doing this job? It actually loosens up the hold that corporation can have on you, and it allows you to behave differently. We put our hand up for an opportunity that we shouldn't take because we're already overworked, or we don't put our hand up because we're nervous that we might fail. But if you're not so worried about losing your job, maybe those things won't happen.
Welcome to Everyone's Talking Money, where we get brutally honest about money, mindset, and making life richer. Daniel, you retired early after 20 years in tech, but now it seems like you're busier than ever, writing, podcasting, and coaching people for free. What does freedom actually feel like when you're not worried about money anymore?
It feels amazing, I have to admit. I set a goal for myself, kind of building a program so I could have the option not to work. I had no idea how smart that was back in the day. I kind of did it from necessity. But when I got to a point when I really started feeling burned out with my career and really trapped by the clock at my work, uh, when I had that option, my spouse was like, "Why aren't you taking it? What's going on here?" And I got into a lot of psychology about what keeps us at work, even when we don't have to be there. And when I took the leap, it's scary, but I have been so happy I did so because life really kind of starts when you stop working and start living on your own terms. And that freedom I have now to give information out and teach people financial literacy and do nonprofit volunteering and master playing pool, like my hobbies, like all those things, and spending time with my kids while before they move out. All those things have just been so enriching.
And how old were you when you started to make this shift and realize this life that you're living now can actually become a reality if you take those steps?
Yeah, I think it started becoming real about 7 years ago when was really hitting my stride with my financial milestones. I started building what became my program, really a necessity because I had so much debt starting out, well, as we all do. Like we don't have income, we start just borrowing, and that debt can be scary. And some of us can start with a lot. I started with, triple figure debt, and I got myself organized. But as I got into a career where I helped corporations organize these really complex goals into attainable steps for themselves, I realized that's what I was just doing in my life. And when I started getting really successful, because no one taught me anything financial, nothing like school, parents, nothing. So I was teaching myself, and we become our own experts because no one's more biased to our own success as we are. And as I started getting there, and with the support of my spouse, and I'm teaching my kids, I realized, wow, this is going to happen. And then when it does happen, you kind of look back and you forget how hard it is. It's like someone who masters playing guitar, right? They try to teach someone and they're like, yeah, just do this. And it's like, why are they struggling? Well, it's because they haven't built the calluses. They haven't figured out the rhythm. They don't have the confidence. But as you start to hit milestone after milestone, the confidence builds. You get better at managing risk. You get better at asking the right questions. You get better at getting ahead. And then, you can teach other people to do the same.
So, the early retirement movement, which is called FIRE, Financial Independence, Retire Early, that's gaining a lot of momentum and it's really becoming a thing where I think 20 years ago, someone said, I'm going to retire early. It's like, what? How is that even possible? Why is that gaining momentum? And how much does it have to do with control or freedom, flexibility? What's the inspiration behind it all?
I think there's a little bit of a wake up happening, and like this is not happening overnight, right? There's this shift happening since I think the early 2000s, and fire is not a new thing. Like you said, I think it was first introduced in a book called Your Money, Your Life by Vicki Robin and Joe Domingos, where this idea that, hey, there was this Trinity study and, they were looking at the data they had at the time, but they were really seeing that, if you could save 25 times your cost of living, you could survive on that at a 4% withdrawal rate for what lifespans were back then. And so this was still taboo even back then to talk about, hey, leaving work early. The idea is like you give yourself to a company, that company takes care of you. Back then, pensions were still really common. Now with when 401k kind of came into the picture, pensions started going away, people started feeling like, well, no one's taking care of me. I'm giving everything to this company. I either got laid off or I didn't get the promised promotions or the raises that I, need to maintain my family's well-being, or even worse, I just can't retire. And so delayed retirements and things like that start happening. And it can be really jarring to be in a position where you don't feel like your twilight years are comfortable, and you got your time, but you don't have your health and you don't have the financial means necessarily to do the things you might want to do. And I think people are rightfully starting to level the scale a little bit on that, and not taking their jobs for granted, not taking their financial well-being for granted, and is willing to make steps, because the truth is the strategies out there, once you know them, anybody can take them. Anybody, doesn't matter your income level. And once have some discipline and applying to a plan, you can accomplish financial freedom. And when you know the number and you have strategies to get to the number, then all of a sudden you have a choice. And that choice is, do I want to work for this job? Or maybe I want to work for a part-time job. Maybe I want to do like a barista fire thing where I'm kind of semi-retired. I'm just doing something that's fun for me. I'm not making as much money because I don't need it. I'm okay. And so really it comes down to choice. And I think people are just giving themselves that again.
There are a couple things that you mentioned that I want to hit on. First are the actual numbers. So you said 25 times your yearly expenses is, and I'm sure the listeners are like doing quick math right now or trying to figure it out. So is that still, because you mentioned that book was written some time ago, is that still like a realistic number that we should strive for? And what do we say to someone that like does the quick math and is like, oh, forget it, I can't, I'm not even going to be close to that?
Yeah. Not to be a rain cloud here, but I think the short answer is it's not realistic. And I think there's been rightful criticism about the Trinity study and things like that. And anyone who's been really close to fire had probably have felt a little bit of that uncertainty about some of the numbers and things like that. And just to be clear, the book I wrote is not a fire book. It's not at all. Fire is a reference. So there's so many strategies out there. There's a die by zero strategy. There's like different budgeting strategies. My goal was to educate all of those options because some of them are right for you. Some may not be right for you, but knowing the number is key. And the problem with just a general 25 times is back then they didn't really think about the rise in healthcare costs. They did look at inflation, but there's certain aspects that they didn't take account for. And now people mitigate that by saying, okay, well, I'm not going to withdraw 4%. I might do 3.5% so I can get a little further. I think the biggest criticism was life expectancy. It was just different. People are living longer, which is great. But, when we're living longer as a financial planner, I'm, trained to think about, hey, and by the way, I'm training to be a financial planner. I'm not certified yet. This is one thing I'm doing in my early retirement. But as I'm going through the training, I'm learning that you have to think about our life expectancy because every year of life has a cost to it. And we're basically funding every single year of our future life through saving and investing and budgeting. And with the Trinity study, they looked at this idea of what the life expectancies were then, not what they will become. So that was kind of a long way of me saying, these numbers are too simplistic. And so what I look at in the book is the nuance. You need to think about vision planning, and this is where we get into the program stuff. But any complex goal is broken down into smaller steps. And this is what I was trained to do as a program manager. Your financial freedom is your complex goal. It's just like it's this dream that we have, but it can be attainable. And when you start breaking it down into the things that you need to do based on what you know about yourself, but more importantly, the dreams you have, the life events you're looking to finance, now what you can get to is a real number, a number that's actually relevant to you. Because Sherry, your number is different than mine. It's just, they are like 25 is not true for both of us. Like I might have a different family history of illness. I might have a different health condition or lifestyle or something that's going to impact my longevity. And also, we have different family sizes. We have different points of our lives. So as we think about that, what we end up with is a personalized plan with, tailored numbers that are actually way, way more accurate or precise than what you get with these kind of overly simplistic frameworks.
When you're doing your workshops and you're working with your clients, and you mentioned eh, there's a point where you realize my employer is not going to take care of me forever, or like something happens. I personally had that moment very early on in my career when I worked in a corporate job. I traveled the country. I actually educated financial advisors, and I got laid off at 8 months pregnant with my second child. And it like that was my wake up call of, wow, I spend 4 nights a week in a hotel room, waking up in different cities. I'm sacrificing all of this stuff. And then that's kind of how they repay me, right? That was my wake up call of I can't depend on an employer. And it didn't happen immediately, but I started to set the foundation of I'm going to need to depend on myself one day, right? What have you seen when you're working with your clients that it's like their aha moment or their wake up call? But then how hard is it to actually get them to transition, or what needs to happen to get them to transition into this new lifestyle?
Yeah, first, sorry that I went through that way. That's a rough one, especially when you're having your family. I do think these wake up calls they happen. The more I'm meeting with people and hearing their stories, the more I'm realizing that conversations can help us have those wake up calls earlier than a forced life event. So, for instance, I was meeting with a younger guy. He's in Canada. He's working to. He just didn't understand how borrowing worked. Ended up with maxing out multiple credit cards and was struggling because wasn't able to get the employment that he thought he was going to get. And that was his wake up call. But it came earlier, I think, for him than it does for others of us. And so there's not one, watershed moment where we have these things happen, but they can happen when they do. But a conversation can facilitate it. And so one thing that I try to do when I'm talking to people is it's kind of helping ask questions, because a lot of the way we give ourselves to work, the way we think about money, these come from our money script. And money script, I'm not sure if you covered that term before. I know you talk about psychology of money a lot, but there's a doctor, Brad Kantz, came up with this, and it's in his book, Mind Over Money, which is this idea that the way we're raised influences our values and our implicit behaviors when it comes to money. So if you think back to your childhood, there was probably things you've noticed, or it was maybe you didn't talk about money in the house, or maybe money was a negative thing, or it could have been a positive thing. We carry those things with us implicitly into our future and other behaviors as well. And it actually can hold us back when it comes to a lot of things. And by being able to have a conversation and asking questions like, money is to you blank. Well, when you fill the blank in, it's actually really revealing, right? It can tell you a lot about how you're thinking about, your relationship with that, and your spouse might be different than yours, or your kids could be different. And so this is a family kind of exercise. But once you go through all that, you start to understand your intrinsic and extrinsic motivators, and you could be more honest about, am I setting attainable goals for myself? And when it comes to work, just to come back to the work thing, um, a lot of stuff can get in our way with why we work the way we do and the expectations that we have. For instance, we might be thinking, okay, if I give my all, I do all that traveling, I, put in those extra hours, then my value will be seen. And there's no way that my income could be impacted because my employer will recognize it. But the thing is, they are motivated by different things. They have a different agenda than your agenda. And it may not always be transparent. So when we're impacted by a shift in the corporate agenda or something like that, it can be jarring and surprising. And we can put blinders on when it comes to that, sadly, because again, our biases, the way we're raised, the way we think about life, the way we think about our goals, can be really a focus of things. And we have this idea of loss aversion. We don't want to lose our jobs. It's painful to lose something, especially something that we tie our identity into. And so with that, we dig in. And also, the better we do, the more we kind of trap ourselves. The golden handcuff idea, right? The better we're doing, the more we're paid, the more we don't want to lose that income. But once you free yourself from that by going, okay, what if I take money as a motivator out of the picture? What if the paycheck isn't the reason I'm motivated by doing this job? Now, all of a sudden, it actually, regardless of how you're raised and all of those other biases, it actually loosens up the hold that corporation can have on you. And it allows you to behave differently if you want to. And that's what I really love about that, because sometimes we put our hand up for an opportunity that we shouldn't take because we're already overworked, or we don't put our hand up because we're nervous that we might fail at taking those things. But if you're not so worried about losing your job, maybe those things won't happen. Maybe you won't overwork yourself, or maybe you will stretch and try something new and take a chance. And in my experience, when we do those things, ironically, we get ahead. But yet we're so afraid of loss, we don't normally do the right things because it's not always rational. So those conversations can help, but a lot of it comes down to self-reflection, understanding how we were raised, who we are, what our biases are, so that we can start to build a rational program around it to start overcoming those things and get closer to our goals.
So when someone says, I want to start thinking differently, money is no longer a factor when it comes to my job. Why am I here? Why does it motivate me? Or if you say, well, if I take away the money, then no, I don't like my job. I don't want to do it. I wouldn't do it for free. Right. What, but do you find that someone needs to be in a certain financial position first before they can even entertain that conversation?
Yeah, I think that's fair, right? Like, look, a lot of time, having money means you can make more money. That you get into certain situations where you might be more comfortable to make harder decisions like that. And you might find you might not be able to get to that position because you're just making ends meet, right? How am I ever going to get to that point? And that's completely fair. And I'm not trying to say like you're doing something wrong and you should be at that point if you're not. Absolutely not. The system is really difficult, and it's not an equal opportunity system. And we have to try to find strategies to try to overcome these things. What I would say though is that there do you know what your number is? Do you know what your spending is? And what I'm getting at is we can all do something when it comes to improving our current situation. And a lot of what I'm showing in the book is breaking apart, demystifying our own financial situation, our own psychologies, so that we can go, okay, well, this is the hand I have. How do I play it as best as possible to get closer to my goals? And if I can't get there, what is my plan B or my plan C? And if you are in a situation where you're doing absolutely everything right and you're still only able to make ends meet, I have to say, I haven't met that person yet. In all of my consultations and everything I've done, there's always something that we can do to improve a situation and just to create more of a buffer when it comes to cash flow than someone has. Because the truth is, we will spend everything we're given. You give me a paycheck, I can find a way to spend every dollar in it. And a lot of times when we're, just doing that, it's just because, rightfully so, there's a lot of costs in our lives. And it can be hard to put boundaries up on that. But once you start to do that, and let's say your goal is you're going to invest 10% of every paycheck, but I can't do that. I don't have 10% to invest. Well, I promise with a budget, you can get to 10%. There are non-essentials in everyone's lives that we can start to cut back. And actually, Sherry, you covered this on the show quite a bit, like tricks you can do when you travel or when you budget or when you spend. Don't spend, don't buy twice. Like these things, these strategies can give us more room to have cash flow to start to make a dent. And then with time, that snowballs. And then you get into a position, and it does take discipline, but you get into a discipline where, position where you can actually get to the position where you have the option. But yes, that could take time, and time is the key here. It could be 1 year for one person. It could be 20 or 30 years for another person. It just depends on where you are, what type of situation you're in, and how disciplined you're willing to be with some of the strategies.
Yeah, time and finances, I mean, that just goes together, right? We can implement all the change we want, but we need to have time to let it cook and marinate and actually have an effect. But what do you think most people get wrong about saving, investing, budgeting that really holds them back?
Well, let's start with investing. I think this one's a good one because I think a lot of people I've talked to who don't invest, it's because they were told investing is not something that they should do or are supposed to do. That's something, rich people do. Like my parents didn't invest. I wasn't really taught to invest. The truth is you have to. Like to get ahead, you have to invest. I've yet to meet anyone who has been able to achieve financial freedom without some level of investing. Now look, and we invest all the time. Like it's not like I'm talking about stock market. I'm not talking about the stock market. I'm talking about investing in your own skills. I'm talking about investing in, it could be real estate, it could be crypto, it could be stock market, it could be something, it could be writing books, it could be whatever it is, but you have to invest ideally in yourself and then into something that you see value into. Because the idea is you're going to make so much cash in your life. There is a finite number there. You don't know what it is, but there's only a certain amount of money you will ever make in your entire lifetime. You want to turn that into more dollars. Every dollar you make, you want to turn it into as many as possible. You want to stretch that. And investing is the way that we can do that. Saving is also investing in a way, right? When you save, you have an interest rate. That interest rate has compound growth. That is becoming more money. A high yield savings account will expand that. And so there's catalysts that we can apply in our strategies to get more speed to, because time is critical, to speed us up. And that's what I'm teaching too, is how to get the most velocity out of escaping that clock, because we want to get to freedom as quickly as possible. And we have more time, more health to enjoy our lives. Yeah. But so investing is one. I think with saving, it's not fun to save. It's fun to spend. There's a reason spending is the way it is and why we borrow and use credit cards the way we do, because there's actually even a dopamine hit with spending. And it's much easier to justify. I should spend the $100 I have right now on this thing because it would make me happier, rather than put that $100 into some savings account for some future me, and then that's much harder to do. But if you automate it, now it's easier. What if you didn't have $100 in your hand and you were forcing yourself to make the decision? What if it was $50? Because 50 of it had already been automatically saved and invested. Well, now you're going to justify spending the $50, and maybe you will decide on, spending a little differently than you would have before, but you already took care of your future. You've already spent that other 50 on your own well-being down the line. And if it's been automatically invested or saved well, it's actually, you just made yourself money. It's more than $50. It's going to compound into something more. There's no guarantees on returns with like the stock market, but there's other places you can get guaranteed returns, and like certificate deposits. Usually with savings accounts, they don't guarantee a fixed interest rate, but it's usually going to give you something back. So you can put them into accounts and you can think about your risk level and what you're willing to do there. But the idea is trying to hack your own behaviors a bit so that you're making it easier on yourself rather than harder.
How can people overcome the mental blocks or fears that stop them from getting ahead with at work or with their finances?
Mm. Yeah, I think that's a really good question because we are our own worst enemies. I think
Mhm.
a lot of the
Yes.
time, we know what we want to do. We know we even we're smart and we're motivated and we learn the right thing to do, but we don't always do it. We're not always rational. Right. And I think that's part of the issue there. Um, I think it comes down to first just being honest with yourself about why you behave the way you do and what's holding you back. There might be a real reason, like a real risk, that is why you're not doing something, like with work. You might not be willing to switch your job because of a real fear. It could be the market, the job market's not good. And you're worried that if I left that job, there's no guarantee I could get another job at comparable pay, or maybe I wouldn't work at all, and that would hurt my livelihood. That is a completely rational fear, and that's something that, rightfully should make you hesitate. But there might be more irrational fears in our lives that hold us back, things that again go back to maybe the way we were raised or some other stigma or thing in our lives. Those are the better ones, I think, to kind of focus on. And it starts with that little bit again of that kind of prompting yourself different things about how you were raised and who you are and what your values are. And you can do this with like a loved one as well, where you can kind of share stories about your financial childhoods, and you can kind of like, hey, well, in this scenario, what would you do with the money? Well, okay, why do you think you would do that with the money? And you can start to kind of like come together to understand your behaviors a little bit. And anything that's a little bit of a, oh, I don't know why I do this, or I wish I didn't do that, those are the ones you can create action items against into your program. And in the program, that's your plan, right? That's the thing you're trying to measure progress towards. And but if it comes down to, well, for some reason I measure my self worth on my net worth, that's your thing. That's actually that's kind of a one that comes from a money will solve all my problems narrative, or or you can never have enough money. If you're that kind of person, then you're gonna find that you're always chasing making more. Always, you're gonna be always trying to get that promo. You're always trying to you're always looking at your account balances. Those aren't always healthy activities. You might not like that you do those activities, and you might find that you're overworking yourself and under deprioritizing family because of that script. As soon as you recognize that script, you can go, okay, I'm not going to measure my worth by how much money I have. I'm going to measure it by some other metric. And you can even use your loved ones to help hold you accountable there. But really, the program is about measuring how well you're doing. You're either making progress to your goals or you're not. If you are, you should lean in. If you're not, you should think about some other strategy or mitigating it some other way.
And that's so important, especially if you have a spouse or a partner, to talk through some of these scenarios, because you will learn a lot about them and yourself when you talk through these different things. So you mentioned the
The
person
person
chasing the
chooses.
net worth. I call them money hoarders because they can never have enough. Once they say, "Well, I need to have this amount in my savings account." Once you get there, there's no celebration, there's no feeling good. It's like, "Well, no, I really need 10,000 more. That's the number I should have." And you're always moving the goalpost, and you're never going to feel good about your financial situation because the carrot's just always dangling in front of you. And that's where it's important to have a partner, a friend, a spouse, whoever it is, understand that about you, so then they can hold you accountable of, "Hey, you told me you needed X amount. You got there, we got there. Now let's sit in a minute because that's what you said we needed to do." And really say like, "Yeah, okay, we did. And is my life any better? How do I feel better? No, I don't." Okay, well, why don't we feel better? And that's usually the self-worth is tied to your net worth. So there's a bigger issue there. Or you mentioned the dopamine hit through shopping. And it's like, okay, there's more to it. Why, where do you feel not good in your own life that we need to fill up that dopamine, or how can we get that hit in another way that's more productive and doesn't cost money and doesn't set you behind financially. But you may not even realize that you're doing those things until you have a conversation with someone else about it. And I think that's where that's so important, because when we talk money or we don't talk money, we keep it in our head and we think our way's the best way or the normal way. And there is no best way or normal way. Everyone's different, but we all can learn from each other and kind of take elements of everyone else. Like the money hoarder could learn a lot from the someone that needs the dopamine hit because they're enjoying their money. They're using it, they're experiencing it. And that's good and that's okay. And you should. Then obviously the one that's spending can learn a little bit from the hoarder. So we all can learn from each other. There's not one way you need to be with your money, and an extreme of any of them is actually, not very healthy at all. I love that you're teaching financial literacy and doing free coaching. That tells me that something shifted for you beyond just the money, right? So, how did achieving financial independence for yourself change what you want to do with your time?
Yeah. First, I want to say, like, what we're talking about, this is not a certain class of problem for one group of people. Even wealthy people have these same issues, like the millionaire who thinks, oh, now I need to be a billionaire. It's like there's always something more, right, with some of these behaviors. So when I announced I was leaving work, I was 43, and I was at the top of my income for my career, and a lot of people thought that was crazy. They just thought it was nuts what I was doing. And I had lots of fantastic conversations when I was leaving my job, and they were just eye-opening for me because of course, I was making a self-motivated decision. I was making it for myself and my family. I was, tired from work. I met my goals. My son was about to finish high school, go to college. I want to spend as much time with him before he left and things like that. But I'm talking to people at work, and this is at a company that people get paid pretty well, and they're revealing to me really interesting things about their own financial situation because I'm not going to a competitor. I'm retiring. And like, there's nothing threatening about opening up a little bit there. And they were telling me things around the lines of being on autopilot, just really not knowing, having what their finances were. A lot would admit they would just pay a large percentage of their annual net worth to finance advisors, and they had no idea what those finance advisors were even doing. Sometimes they wouldn't even meet with them that year. So, there was a lot of going on there, and they were admitting they needed to do better. And they were interested in learning about what was, motivating me and how I had pulled it off and things like this. Cause a lot of these people were getting paid way better than I was getting paid. And so they were asking if I could capture that, help teach them some of those things. And I've been meeting with many of them ongoing and just helping them. And some of these people have very large net worths. They're doing really well, but they're trapped by that golden handcuffs and some of these biases, and problems are a lack of a plan. So I stumbled into my purpose. And look, when you quote unquote retire, I actually don't love that word. when you
I was
when
gonna ask, did you use
you
the word retire when you left? Did you say, "I'm retiring"?
I did. And looking back, I probably should have said something a little different. It's about financial freedom, right? Like, I basically left my job without having a new job in mind. But when you're young, you look for purpose. Like, you don't stop doing stuff. I wasn't going on a permanent vacation. You have your health when you're younger and you retire. And so for me, I didn't have anything in mind. But because they had asked me to help them, and I was getting so much, and I had done coaching and mentoring on my job, but then it shifted to the financial stuff, and it was like, wow, I'm helping this person, and that felt really good. And I was like, okay, well, let me get this in the book. I get in a book. It did really well. It won some awards, and then people were telling me it was really helping them. And that felt good. And I was like, okay, you know what? I can do more with this. And then I started teaching locally in my state at nonprofits, and I'm talking to teenagers now. So I was talking to adults before. Now I'm talking to teenagers. These teenagers, I would ask them questions like, who knows what an IRA is? Not a single hand goes up. Who knows who has a financial savings goal? Kind of, they would have something small in mind, but nothing bigger than that. So I was like, okay, I can make a real impact here. So keep doing that. Then I said, well, okay, maybe I should go back to school. And look, I am not someone who enjoyed going to school. It was not something I loved doing. I did the best I could. I put myself through college with a little help from my parents. And then, I was done with it, never considering going back. Now I'm getting a wealth management degree because I enjoy what I'm doing so much. I want to learn more, and it's been really validating. But now I podcast. That's what I'm doing. Doing that because it's the best way for me to give out free education content. I can just do that every week. I can put the information out there because if you want to help as many people as possible, you need to find mediums that make it easier to consume that. And reading a book isn't as easy for everybody as it is just to listen to someone tell you what you want to hear. And so that became a stumbled purpose, and it's something that's been very motivating. and driving my family crazy because now all I want to do is talk about what's going on with the finance stuff. But I have to say, when you find your purpose, that is freedom. And if that's your intrinsic motivator, it will drive you to do anything else you want in life. And if your job isn't that for you, once you take money out of the picture there a bit, and it doesn't have to be a crazy amount of wealth, it's just enough that you know you're covering your target lifestyle for as long as you in your families for as long as you need to go. That's what you're trying to calculate. Now you might have the freedom to start to spend your time on your health goal, or you're starting your business, your entrepreneurial goal, whatever it is. And it's the time is usually our limiter because our energy gets sucked up and we just go, okay, I can't put that over these other things.
Your book, your podcast, your program, the mindset is called Escape the Clock.
Yeah.
Tell me where you got that name from and a little bit about how it's, trading time for money.
I got that from one of those conversations I had with someone when I was leaving my job. I mentioned I was having these really eye-opening conversations, and one of my I was a senior manager, and I was talking to one of my peers, a different manager, and he admitted to me that he hadn't taken a vacation in over a year. We had been going through layoffs in the industry, and as managers, we were absorbing a lot of the reduction in force that work didn't go away. So we as managers would pick a lot of it up, and it was just really draining. And a Monday came, and he just couldn't go to work. Like he just physically couldn't get himself to go. And so finally took a day off, and he admitted to me, he just sat on a couch and stared at a clock, just watching and thinking about the meaning of time. And that was just ticking away. Now he couldn't get away from it. It's like, go to this meeting, pick up the kids, do this thing. It's just like, we can allow ourselves to be really trapped by whatever agenda is being put in front of us. And what we do is we put our own agenda on the back burner as a result. And the idea was like, hey, if you could escape that paradigm, all of a sudden, maybe you can then start to run your agenda again, follow your dreams, and do those things that sadly, with the traditional retirement age, becomes too elusive. Because if you're 65 or 70, you don't always have the health left or the motivation left to go do those things. So the idea was do it while you still had the motivation to do it. So that's where the name came from. For me, I'm a very structured minded person. I'm a program manager. So I wanted to have structure in my day. So I started taking the time in the day and still making an agenda for myself. Like I work out certain times every day in the week. I walk my dog a certain time every day. I like to practice pool for an hour a day. I like to write, I'm writing a new book, and I spend, a couple hours a day doing that, or a time with family, catching up with friends. I like that structure, but I know not everyone needs that. But some people do struggle with the transition from a work life to a non-work life. And so I teach in the book how to make that easier on yourself by easing yourself in with some structure, social activities, things like that, make it feel familiar, because then over time you start to loosen that up, and then you just do the things that you wanted to do without that anxiety.
Yeah, so I think that that's one of the major hurdles that when someone wants to retire, whether they're 45, 65, 75, it's what am I going to do with my time? Because I'm used to working, getting ready for work, traveling, being at the office, coming home. Like that was my life. And you really do need to transition into it. You have to have a plan. Waking up at 11 and, sitting by the pool or having Mai Tais going on vacation, that only lasts for so long, right? And that's not what retirement is anymore. Retirement is we're filling our days with things. We can only golf so many times, right? There's only so many things we can do. It's fun for a little bit, but then you need to fill your days. So, how do you work with your clients through getting past that mindset? Because I think that's a big mindset shift too of I'm now going to be responsible for filling my time where before my job, that was my job's job.
Yeah. First, I start with trying to help people be honest where the stigma is coming from, because there is a societal stigma with the idea of retirement, especially early retirement. The idea that, oh, you're retiring, so what are you going to do? Lay around playing video games all day and sleeping in and doing nothing, and being not contributing to society. These negative prompt, like things, these are to hold people back, right? And when you're applying those to yourself, it's usually coming from somewhere else, something external. And sometimes it can be, sadly, from a loved one, right? Like someone might be applying that to our lives, and it's worth getting into helping have productive conversations about why do you think that way? Why are you saying those things? Is that coming from your parents or from something else? Because the truth is, you should have some objective in mind with your time. You should not transition. If you're transitioning to an early retirement because you hate your job, you're set up for failure. I just, it is, because the problem with that is you're trying to escape your job. You're not chasing purpose. Without purpose, you're just not going to have anything sticky there, right? Something that's going to keep you motivated, help you overcome those stigmas. So with the purpose in mind, you're actually transitioning towards something, not away from something. And when you're running towards something, you can talk about that and frame that as your rationale. So let's just say it was like a boyfriend who is the one saying, "Hey, what, you want to retire early, sit around all day doing nothing?" And if they're saying things like that, like, no, that's not what I'm doing. I'm actually leaving my job so I can start to work on my business, or I can start to go back to school, or I can reconnect with my mom, or whatever your thing is. It could be family oriented, it could be health oriented, it could be business oriented. It has to be something that drives you, though. And that's why like nonprofit work or volunteer work can be really powerful, because if financial isn't a concern, and it's just you have that capital of time back, you can spend that on and you like that work corporate structure that work brings into your life. You can still have that. You can do that through a nonprofit or a volunteer job, where you can feel like, okay, there's some agenda I'm still part of. I'm still socially connected to the fabric of this community. I am doing something bigger than myself. That you don't have to lose anything by doing this. It's just about a math problem of figuring out the financial stuff, some discipline to accomplish it, and then finding that purpose in a way that works for your life without allowing all that negativity of what others trying to do to hold you back, being honest about that so that you're not holding yourself back.
It's almost like we need to think of another word for it, right? Because we think of retirement of just leaving our full-time job and then, doing nothing, hanging out, but that's not what retirement looks like today. It looks different for everyone. But in general, we're filling our days like you've mentioned, but we still just paint it with the retirement brush. So I'd be curious as to what another word could be for it. I can't think of it, but I mean, obviously the action of it is escaping the clock. But if someone wanted to escape the clock as we wrap up, what is the first step they should take?
The reason I wrote a book is because I wanted a comprehensive guide for people. Because the truth is, like, if you think about learning finances, it's overwhelming for a lot of people, right? Like, again, we're not taught all these things like saving accounts, what's the right type, how to budget, what retirement accounts, 401k, pre-tax, after tax. There's just a lot to manage, right? And so I wanted to put all of that into one place, because there's 1,000 books out there and they're fantastic. But my problem with having read all these books is they'll give you like one philosophy or a couple good ideas, but they're not teaching you how to do it. So that's what Escape the Clock, the book, is doing. It's showing you how to build that plan so that you're oriented to take action, and so that it's using a program management framework. So every complex goal can be broken into smaller, more attainable steps. And if you think about your financial freedom as your overarching program goal, then you can think of financial milestones such as your non-retirement net worth, your retirement account net worth, your passive income, cash flow. You can think of those as your major milestones in your program. You need to hit those numbers. Enough money in a brokerage account, enough money in retirement accounts, enough cash flow coming in for passive income. If you think about those as your milestones, then what you can do is you can have SMART goals, the SMART, the acronym. And the SMART goals are important here. And I'm talking more and more like a project manager per second, but the SMART goals means that they're specific to you. They're actually measurable. So you can be honest if it's working or not. They should be attainable. So, you're actually reflecting in detail about what it would take to achieve them. They're relevant and they're time bound. So, because of that, you're creating goals for yourself that incite action. And when you do that, you have projects that you're taking. It might be pay off your house. It could be fund your kids' college savings. It could be live a debt free life. These are projects that you take on, and within those projects, you have tasks. And the tasks are going to be a thing like with the mortgage one. It could be get to an 8% equity, get rid of PMI, right? You could have like specific tasks you're taking. It could be overpayment schedules to principal to get to zero. It could be refinancing. Yeah, there are specific tasks you're taking, and then you're measuring, is this getting me closer to my SMART goal or not? And what you end up with is a really nice formatted report. I guess for lack of a better word, the program has a shape to it. And that shape is easy to understand for you, but for others. And that gives you something you can share with your spouse, with your financial advisor, with your CPA, whoever. And they can see exactly what your numbers are, what you're trying to do, how far away you are. And you are a program manager. And as a program manager, you're taking actions, you're trying things out, you're seeing how far you get. When you hear great things like on this podcast, you can add it into your program plan as a project. The happiness index, I'll just use a quick example. That's a measurable thing. If that's what you like, let's say that's your thing, you want to increase your happiness, you can put that as a project in your program plan. You can measure, are you increasing your number or not? These are just examples. There's many, many things you could do. And as you go, you're a risk manager as well. You're thinking ahead. Life is full of uncertainty. And the way to help push yourself towards those goals is to think, what could go wrong? If it does go wrong, you can do a postmortem. Well, how can I avoid that happening again in the future? And you get better and you get better at that over time. You hit more and more milestones. Like I said in the beginning, you're going to get momentum. And before you know it, you'll be financially free. But it does take putting together your program. And that's what the book is done, is giving the comprehensive strategies and how to build a plan.